Well, it seems like we picked a busy news day to do this deep dive because, wow, a lot came out of that White House press briefing.
I know, right? It's like everything happened at once.
We've got space, Ukraine, domestic policy, legal battles, you name it.
A little something for everyone.
So in this deep dive, let's unpack the key stuff, the things that will help everyone understand what's going on.
Exactly. The surprising details and what it all means without making it too complicated.
Perfect.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's start with, well, this is a pretty amazing story. Astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams are back on Earth.
Back home after nearly 300 days on the International Space Station. That's almost a year.
It's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
And get this, their mission was only supposed to be 8 days.
8 days turned into 300. Someone needs to explain that.
I know, right? So the White House briefing is saying that it's because the previous administration just didn't make it a priority, like they lacked urgency or something.
So they're painting the current administration as the ones who got things done.
Exactly. Ms. Leavitt even said that President Trump, basically as soon as he took office, told SpaceX and NASA to get those astronauts back ASAP.
Like a top priority.
Yep. And apparently acting NASA Administrator Janet Petro said they worked diligently to pull the schedule a month earlier because President Trump told them to.
So they're making it very clear that they see this as a success story, a direct result of the current administration's actions.
And President Trump's going to welcome them back to the Oval Office.
Quite the homecoming.
It definitely makes you think, was it really just not prioritizing it, or was there more to it? I mean, space travel is complicated.
Definitely. But it fits with the theme. We see a lot of new administration comes in, fixes things that the previous one messed up.
Right, right. Okay, let's move on to something a little closer to home, but just as concerning, the war in Ukraine.
Right. Everyone wants to know what's happening there.
So the briefing talked about how President Trump's been talking to both President Putin and President Zelensky, trying to find a way to get this war to end.
Working towards peace.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that President Trump and President Putin apparently agreed they need to find a lasting peace and improve relations between their countries.
So at least they're on the same page about that.
Yeah, which is a good starting point, I guess. Yeah. Then President Trump talked to President Zelensky, too, to see what Ukraine needs and what they want to happen.
Trying to find common ground.
Yeah. And, President Trump has always said that all the money being spent on the war could be better used to help people.
It's a valid point. War is expensive in more ways than one.
Definitely. So the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State both said it was a fantastic phone conversation between President Trump and President Zelensky.
Sounds promising.
And President Zelensky thanks President Trump for all the support the U.S. has given them, especially the Javelin missiles.
Those have been pretty crucial for Ukraine's defense, haven't they?
Absolutely. They also apparently agreed to keep working together under President Trump's leadership to actually end this war and get some real peace.
So President Zelensky seems happy with the U.S.'s involvement.
Yeah. Oh, and they also talked about this region called Kursk. It's in Russia, right on the border with Ukraine. They're going to share more information about what's happening there.
So more communication and transparency, which is always a good thing.
Right. President Zelensky asked for more air defense systems, specifically Patriot missiles.
Those are pretty high-tech.
Yeah. And President Trump said he'd see what's available, especially in Europe.
Interesting. So maybe they're trying to get other European countries more involved in helping Ukraine.
Maybe. And get this, they agreed on a kind of ceasefire, a partial ceasefire.
Partial? What does that even mean?
Well, it only applies to energy infrastructure.
As they're still fighting but not attacking each other's power grids or anything like that.
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sending technical teams to meet in Saudi Arabia to talk about expanding it to the Black Sea.
The Black Sea, that's where Russia's Black Sea Fleet is based.
Exactly. The ultimate goal is a full ceasefire, of course.
So, baby steps.
I guess you could say that. And apparently, President Zelensky was very thankful to President Trump for pushing for this, for being willing to go for a full ceasefire.
Well, nobody wants this war to continue.
For sure. They also talked about Ukraine's electricity and their nuclear power plants.
Oh, wow. That's getting into some really sensitive areas.
I know, right?
Yeah.
There was even talk about the U.S. maybe helping out with those and even maybe, get this, owning them.
Owning Ukraine's nuclear power plants. That's a huge development.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it's just a possibility they're talking about, at least for now.
It would definitely change the whole dynamic there.
No kidding. And they also talked about humanitarian stuff, like getting prisoners of war exchanged. President Zelensky actually thanked President Trump for pushing for that.
That's important. It's not just about the fighting, it's about the people who are caught in the middle of it.
Exactly. And apparently there was a successful prisoner exchange recently.
That's good news, at least for those involved.
Definitely. And then President Trump asked about those missing Ukrainian children.
Oh, right. It's terrible what's happened to so many of them.
It is. President Trump said he'd work with both sides to try to get them back.
Well, let's hope they can do something about that.
Yeah. So Ms. Leavitt said that all the people involved, Secretary Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Special Envoy Kellogg, they're all still working on this.
Trying to figure out the details of this ceasefire and how to expand it.
Right. And she actually said that because of President Trump's leadership, the U.S. has never been this close to peace there.
That's a bold statement.
It is. And they confirmed that the U.S. will keep sharing intelligence with Ukraine.
So they're helping Ukraine defend itself while also trying to make peace.
Seems like a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears now to something completely different.
What else is there?
Remember those classified JFK assassination records?
Oh, wow, that's right. They were supposed to release more of those.
They did. Something like 80,000 pages worth of documents.
80,000 pages. That's incredible. What are they hoping to find in all of that?
I don't know, but it's available online for anyone to look at. Archives.gov JFK. You can even go see them in person at the National Archives in Maryland.
So they're really making this information public.
Yeah. And they're working on digitizing the ones you can only see in person, so eventually it'll all be online.
Well, that'll keep conspiracy theorists busy for a while.
Probably. Okay, let's talk about the economy for a minute. The briefing highlighted some positive economic data that they say is because of President Trump's policies.
Like what?
Well, they said that the manufacturing sector bounced back in February after it had been declining under the previous administration.
So they're taking credit for turning things around.
Pretty much. And industrial production in February was apparently the highest it's ever been, even better than they were expecting.
Wow, so things are really booming, at least according to them.
They say it's because of deregulation and their focus on domestic energy, which they claim is why gas prices are lower. They even mentioned a Newsweek article about it.
Well, it's always tricky to say for sure what causes economic changes.
For sure. But they're definitely linking it to their policies. Okay, this next one is pretty controversial. Mass deportations.
Oh, right. That's been a big issue for this administration.
Yeah. So FBI Director Kash Patel announced they caught a fugitive, Francisco Javier Roman Bardales, who was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
Wow, that's a big catch.
Yeah, he was an MS-13 leader, and they extradited him.
Not surprising, considering how the administration feels about MS-13.
Not at all. And ICE has been arresting a bunch of people with serious criminal records from Guatemala, Ecuador, and Mexico.
So they're going after people they see as dangerous criminals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Ms. Leavitt called them heinous criminal alien monsters and blamed the previous administration for letting them into the country.
She doesn't hold back, does she?
Not at all. She said every deportation makes the country safer.
It's a tough stance, but it's definitely resonating with some people.
For sure. And someone asked about those flights taking Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador, the ones designated as foreign terrorists.
Oh, right. Those were controversial.
Ms. Leavitt said they're still doing mass deportations, but didn't say anything about flights to El Salvador specifically.
So they're not backing down on this policy.
Nope. And they said the president has the authority to deport foreign terrorists under the Alien Enemies Act.
The Alien Enemies Act. That's an old law, isn't it?
Yeah, from way back in 1798.
I wonder if it's really applicable in this situation.
Well, someone's challenging it in court.
Right. There was that whole thing with Judge Boasberg.
Yeah, Mrs. Leavitt called him a Democrat activist and said he was appointed by Barack Obama. She even brought up how his wife donates to Democrats.
She really went after him personally.
She did. But then someone from the press pointed out that Judge Boasberg was actually first appointed by George W. Bush.
Oh, so not as politically one-sided as she made it seem.
Yeah. And then she said that a lot of the injunctions against President Trump's policies have come from judges appointed by Democrats.
Trying to paint it as a partisan attack on the president.
Exactly. So President Trump's really not happy with this judge in the deportation case.
What did he say?
He thinks the judge should be impeached.
Impeached? That's serious.
Yeah, he's not messing around. But he also said he respects Chief Justice John Roberts and thinks the Supreme Court will put a stop to all these judges he sees as being activists.
So he's hoping the Supreme Court will side with him on these issues.
That seems to be the strategy. And they said it's all just lawfare against the president, just like what he went through during the campaign.
Lawfare?
Yeah, it's like using the legal system to attack someone for political reasons.
Interesting. I guess it depends on your perspective.
Right. Anyway, They're really defending their use of the Alien Enemies Act for these deportations, especially for the Tren de Aragua.
Who are they again?
They're a Venezuelan gang that the U.S. designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Mrs. Leavitt said they're a predatory incursion sent by the hostile Maduro regime.
So they're painting them as a serious threat to national security.
Yeah. And they're using that to justify deporting them.
Well, it's definitely a complex legal situation.
It is. Okay, switching gears again. This is a weird one. There's a website that's trying to dox Tesla owners.
Doxing. That's scary.
Yeah, it is. The White House condemned the website and any violence against Tesla or its employees or owners.
I wonder why someone would do that.
Well, they pointed out that a lot of Tesla owners were originally Democrats.
So maybe it's politically motivated.
Maybe. And they called on Democrats to condemn the violence, too, especially after Elon Musk endorsed President Trump.
Yeah, that makes sense. It shouldn't matter what party you belong to. Violence is never okay.
Right. And the Attorney General is investigating this as domestic terrorism.
Wow, they're taking this really seriously.
They are. Okay, next up. 2 Democratic FTC commissioners were fired.
Fired? What happened there?
Ms. Leavitt said it was just the time was right and that the president has the authority to do it.
But why fire them?
She didn't really say, just that they wanted to let them go.
This is a little suspicious.
Yeah. But she also said they're ready to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court if they have to.
So they're prepared for a legal battle over this.
Definitely. Oh, and this is a crazy story. The former president of the USP barricaded himself in his office after he was fired.
The UCP?
The United States Institute of Peace.
Oh, right. What happened?
Well, they had to get the police to remove him. And then he said that people from DOGE had illegally removed him.
DOGE. What's that?
Apparently, it's some people associated with Elon Musk who are involved in the transition at the USP.
Elon Musk. What's he got to do with this?
It's a little unclear. But Ms. Leavitt said it was all a concerted effort by rogue bureaucrats to stop the new political appointees from coming in.
So she's saying it was a coordinated resistance effort.
Yeah. And she mentioned a Daily Caller report that said USP staff barricaded doors, cut off phone lines and internet access, all that stuff.
Wow, that's wild.
It is. And she said it's just resistance from bureaucrats who don't want to see change.
Sounds like a pretty tense situation.
Definitely. Okay, back to the Supreme Court. They still haven't figured out who leaked that draft Dobbs opinion.
Right, that was a big deal.
Mrs. Leavitt said the president wants to find leakers and that it's unacceptable, especially when it puts people at risk.
Well, it's a serious breach of trust, for sure.
Yeah. Now, this next one's sensitive. Someone filed a complaint with the DOJ about a biological male in a girl's locker room.
Oh, boy.
Ms. Leavitt said she'd let the DOJ handle that, but reiterated the administration's stance that there are only 2 sexes, male and female.
So no recognition of transgender identities.
Nope. She said they won't tolerate men pretending to be women in women's spaces.
Well, that's certainly going to be controversial.
No doubt about it. Okay, here's a lighter one, believe it or not.
Yeah.
The Kremlin said something about maybe having U.S.-Russia hockey games.
Hockey games. In the middle of all this.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Ms. Leavitt said they talked about it, but that the U.S. is more focused on getting a peace deal in Ukraine.
Understandably so.
Right. And remember that minerals deal with Ukraine we talked about?
The one that was supposed to be a big economic boost.
Yeah, that one. Ms. Leavitt said they're not really focused on that anymore. They're more interested in the long-term peace agreement.
So the minerals deal is taking a backseat to ending the war.
That's what it seems like. Someone asked about those federal workers who were reinstated after being fired, because of those legal challenges.
Oh, right. What happens to them now, especially if there are more layoffs?
Well, Ms. Leavitt said they're following the court orders, but that they don't agree with judges acting like judicial activists when it comes to hiring and firing.
There's that phrase again, judicial activists.
Yeah, they really don't like it when judges go against what they want to do.
Makes sense, I guess. No one likes to be told they can't do something.
True. And she said they still want federal workers in D.C. to show up at the office, just like everyone else, and that they're still committed to shrinking the federal bureaucracy.
So business as usual on that front.
Pretty much. Oh, someone asked about helping that organization that's tracking missing Ukrainian children.
I wonder if they're going to do anything about that.
Mrs. Leavitt didn't have any updates on that particular program.
So maybe they're still figuring it out.
Maybe. Okay, good news on the economic front. Gas prices are going down.
That's good news for everyone.
Right. Ms. Leavitt said it's because of President Trump's policies, especially the National Energy Dominance Council.
They're really pushing for energy independence, aren't they?
Yeah, she even called it a Trump energy boom.
Catchy.
Right. And they say that's helping with inflation, too.
Well, lower gas prices usually do have a positive effect on the economy as a whole.
Yeah. Now, this was kind of funny. Governor Walz said something about checking Tesla's stock price to see if it went up.
What's wrong with that?
Well, Mrs. Leavitt was not happy about it. She said it was sad and that Governor Walz is living a sad existence after losing the election.
Ouch. That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
It is, but, politics can get pretty personal.
Definitely. So back to those attacks on Tesla, the arson and vandalism.
Right. Ms. Leavitt said they condemn it and that Attorney General Bondi is investigating it as domestic terrorism.
I wonder if they've found out if it's organized or not.
She didn't say. Okay, last but not least, someone asked about putting more pressure on Russia to get a full ceasefire, like sanctions or tariffs.
That would definitely escalate things.
It would. Ms. Leavitt didn't give any specifics, just said that President Trump already talked to Putin and that the negotiating team's on its way to the Middle East.
So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Exactly. Oh, and there was a question about a potential TikTok deal and if Oracle's involved.
That's been going on for a while, hasn't it?
It has. Mrs. Leavitt wouldn't say anything specific, just said they'll announce something when they're ready.
So, still under wraps.
Yep. And someone asked about a pardon for Derek Chauvin.
That's a sensitive topic.
Ms. Leavitt said President Trump's not considering it.
So, no change there.
Nope. And there was some talk about how the U.S. and Russian readouts of the Trump-Putin call were different.
Oh, right, that happens sometimes.
Ms. Leavitt said President Trump stands by his administration's version and what he said on Truth Social.
So he's sticking to his story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing. Someone wanted to know what President Trump considers a bad judge.
It's not just about disagreeing with him, is it?
No. Ms. Leavitt said it's about judges going against the Constitution, taking away executive power, issuing injunctions without good reason, and basically slowing down the president's agenda.
So judges who overstep their bounds, in his view.
Exactly. She gave examples like interfering with deportations and with hiring and firing decisions.
And what about Chief Justice Roberts?
She said President Trump still respects him overall, but thinks the Supreme Court needs to stop these so-called partisan activist judges.
He's really putting the pressure on the Supreme Court.
He is. Someone asked how they plan to rein in these judges, but Ms. Leavitt didn't answer.
Maybe they haven't figured that out yet.
Maybe. Anyway, that was a lot.
It was, wasn't it? A whirlwind of news.
So we talked about everything from astronauts being stuck in space way longer than planned to this partial ceasefire in Ukraine, which is a pretty big deal.
Don't forget those 80,000 pages of JFK files.
Oh, yeah, those too.
Right.
And all those legal battles and this whole judicial activism thing.
It makes you think, how do all these different things connect?
Right, like how do domestic issues affect foreign policy? And what does it mean for the balance of power between the different branches of government?
Big questions.
Definitely. So for all of you listening, we encourage you to do your own research. Look at those JFK files. Keep up with what's happening in Ukraine. Read up on the Alien Enemies Act.
Form your own opinions.
Exactly. And remember, we just presented the information. We're not taking sides. We're not endorsing anything.
It's up to you to decide what you think about all this.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, take care, everyone.